Ich darf Professor Larry Leifer vorstellen. Er ist Direktor des Centers for Design Research an der Stanford University, managing as designing. Please, Larry.
That's fine. Thank you all for being here. I'm delighted. I'm also pleased to share the platform with these prototypes. As you might see in the coming minutes, few things are more important to me than tangible prototypes. I'd like to address some of the tensions we're experiencing in the world around the word design, the phrase design thinking, who owns it, who needs it, what does it mean? I'd like to invite you to my journey. Well, it turns out that in my view of things, everything in design is context dependent. And context dependence suggests that for you to make sense of my talk, you should know who I am. And if I take off my tie and my coat, we'll be getting closer to the real me. Hope I don't lose the microphone. Let's see if I lost anything. And now I'd like to introduce you to the guy on the left. The guy on the left is a surfer from Southern California who just destroyed the microphone, right? Surfers do that, by the way. Yeah, okay. And then, who's that guy? Well, he's this young man who was judged to be not very promising, who got into Stanford University, and he earned a bachelor's degree in engineering. That was good. And he spent 6 months in Florence, and he came back to Stanford and said, I want to be an artist. And he spent 2 years earning the art degree, and he said, well, I don't know anything about people if I'm going to design. So he decided to be a neuroscientist, and he has a PhD. You see that spear? That's the PhD spear. And he had a good life. He flew private airplanes through the mountains, and he drove a Porsche, broom. And then he got an assistant professor. Oh, don't do that, Larry. Assistant professorship at ETH Zurich. They fired me. That's the good news, because I got an associate professorship back at Stanford in design. And then I finally survived to get a full professorship. And that's most of my story, but it's not quite over, because now the computer got ever so much smaller. And my students look like the guy on the right with those little screens. They're not the guy in the middle who's engaging the world whole body. I'm concerned, actually. So this is your dance, your path, our path, through the evolution of devices, technology, and culture, and the degree to which they're bound to each other. It's also the trailer for a conference, international conference we held at Stanford in 2009, about 650 participants, about 50 different countries. Focus was engineering design, but we try hard to embrace all the other flavors of design. We have a long way to go in that embrace. This is your invitation to Stanford. If you haven't been there, anybody been there? Quite a few. Wow, good. Welcome back. Cool, yes. But what is it? Many people would like to have a roadmap to design thinking. And because you want a roadmap, I'm going to give you one. That's it, guys. That's the map. Every journey, every time we go out hunting for the next big idea, it's a new journey. And this is actually a philosophical issue we need to come to terms with. No map. Don't look for one. So what happens when I go to Swisscom, the Swiss telecom company in Bern? They have a group there that's trying to introduce design thinking and innovation. And my host immediately asked this question. We have tension. Well, the story in my world is the Stanford version of design thinking has emerged over the last 50 years, starting in engineering. And over the years, we have invited successively wider community to the design table. So you're going to hear one guy's version of the Stanford version of these things. Back in about 1960, the ME department hired its first industrial designer, and we launched a program with Studio Arts. And over the years, we've spun off all these different flavors. So it's not going to be easy to read, but the big message is the basic strategy, the basic human-centeredness of it, the basic notion that we go hunting without maps can be applied to virtually anything, in our view. And the big ones recently are applied to education, radical changes. Biodesign is the biggest design program at Stanford today. IDEO and the D School are the big new dragons in our nest. And a course I'd like to talk with you about is a local version of design that's gone global. So we actually have some laws, like the laws of thermodynamics, right? Don't go hunting alone, please. Design, as we think of it, is all about people, not the technology, and teams of people. Don't go hunting alone. Choose your hunting mates carefully. Focus communication on tangible prototypes. It's not that they are the idea, it's that that medium is vastly superior to words for communicating about ideas on those hunting teams. I don't do brainstorming. Thank you. We do body storming, physical, tangible prototypes, whole body interaction. We do that because if we're going to invent the future, we have to learn very, very fast. We can't rely on what we learned in college. We have to learn in the wilds of the future. One of the strangest things we have to do as instructors and as managers is to let these crazy people do things. The big word, to pass the exam at the end of the evening, you have to remember the three-letter word let. Let yourself, let your teammates, let the boss. Because we're in a business of creating ambiguity, not removing it. And it's our view that it is the raw material of innovation. We have a terribly oversimplified notion of building people, but not people only, people teams. And this is how we think about it. It's not about whether you're an I person or a T person, but whether you can switch between them. It's time to be in my discipline. It's time to be across the disciplines. We identify the I with knowledge and depth, your expertise. Whether you're a painter or a rocket scientist, you have expertise, things you know. That's good stuff. Use it. Now, what are you going to do with it? The T crossbar is the behaviors of how to use what you know. And these behaviors have been profoundly neglected in formal education, in my opinion. And we need to get them back into adaptive people. Not just back, you go around looking like a T all the time, but you know which thing to do next, because in hunting, that's absolutely crucial. One of the ways that our doctoral student, Michael Lande, tried to convince his advisor it's so hard is that we take students in my course, predominantly from engineering, and demand that they behave like designers. And then we demand that the designer behave like a futurist or a foresight analyst. And we force that person to behave like a manufacturer and to move with agility between those quadrants. And so we give assignments in a course to push or pull teams into all quadrants. And his study was to look at their documentation to see if they actually went there. And in this case, we have one team that actually didn't visit two of the quadrants and wasn't very adventuresome within the two they did visit. And we have another team that visited all the quadrants, repeatedly bounced back and forth, especially between design and engineering. These guys got the wow, fantastic, that's a great outcome, we've got to do that. And the other guys got our deepest humiliation. Thank you, Rhino. Here I'd like to introduce an activity in which we try to transform young people into design thinkers of any color they might need to be, and it's a course. We have a team, typically in some other country, Munich in this case, Stanford, teams of 4, it's a magic number. The teams both get teaching teams. If you want to imbue team skills in people, you better have team leadership. We give them a professional coach, someone who's in the industry, working locally, comes to campus regularly, helps guide and mentor them. In this particular year, we discovered that the typical Münchner is not a typical California graduate student. So we introduced culture coaches. And that person is designated not to deal with design, but to deal with translating cultural variables. Big, especially when we go to China. We're there. The big dog in this whole education story is corporate support. They bring a project. Audi typically brings a big design, the Audi of 2025 for this year, or some feature of that car. They bring money, and the money helps these students move around, and it helps support other factors. So how do we organize these activities? This is the side that's responsible for learning, the academics. The other side is responsible for delivering something of value to that company. So these students work in an organization, a two-headed monster. What did you learn? What did you build? And they work in a complex set of inner teams with different coaches who say different things. I invite you simply to grope that image. Don't read it. It's just about a whole lot of people operating in close, collaborative, co-creation scenario without leadership. Nobody manages that network, I assure you. Well, my community is embedded in this place called Silicon Valley, which is one of the strangest bubbles on the planet. But it's our special bubble, and we enjoy it. And each of the other communities has a different bubble. Berlin, a different bubble. Munich, a different bubble than Berlin. And our goal is to maximize the diversity of the innovation team. Last year, this was the distribution of international partners. Last year was the first time we had 20 projects in the world and only 9 at my campus. I'm delighted to say we moved into Latin America, next year will be Africa, and this year is China. Now's the time to pause and congratulate the conference organizers on coming up with a really wonderful venue that is so old we can recycle it to any purpose we have to put it to. So the space has been great. A little raunchy, but great, we can change it. So we make a place where everybody in the group can see everybody else tangibly. We put stand-up social space in the middle of the room. Suds in our local jargon is beer. Don't tell anybody, we're brewing our own Weiss beer in Palo Alto. The video conferencing happens in the middle of the room. What are the guitars about? A little video conference jazz. Great way to loosen people up. Great way for some people to get some sleep. They're exhausted. Most of the teaching is design reviews. It's virtually no lecturing. Half of these people are the teams, half are the teaching teams. That's how I spend my week, about 30 hours a week. We have a big warm-up exercise to build paper bicycles. That's a University of Art and Design, Aalto University, Helsinki paper bike. Everybody wants to make a bike with one wheel, and they did. It's beautiful, it was very nicely handled. It was built and shipped to Palo Alto, assembled, taken to the field, and it failed. Now I'll show you what it looks like on the field. Well, actually, that slide moved, didn't it? Bad slide. This is the space where we build those paper bikes. And then we take them out on the field, and we play a version of soccer. And the paper vehicle is the cart, and somebody on the team is the pony, and another person is the player, and they try to get these balls to go through the hoop. And they have a good time. But that was last year. What happened this year? This year we added, keep your eye out for it, flying water balloons. Paper bikes in a water balloon storm. I don't think that's a Berliner hobby, I assume. But in this zone, throwing water balloons at each other is enjoyed. A big thing happened in our world when Business Week interviewed David Kelly, co-founder of IDEO, and his CEO, Bruce, and wrote this article, and Mr. Hasse Plattner, the co-founder of SAP Software, read it and walked into corporate conference Sapphire and said, "We are going to become user-centric." company. Anybody from SAP here? Hi. Hasso has invested an unknown but large number to make it happen in the company, to launch an institute in Potsdam, a D school in Potsdam, and to fund the D school at Stanford. I won't say more. They're great guys. If you go to their IDEO website, you will see a pretty standard diagram. This is the model. Of course, those of us who've actually been there know the truth. No map. How do we teach this to people? How do we change companies to adapt a method, a way of doing things that lacks mapping? Well, at this point in time, we use these methods in almost any discipline, and they have some of the following features. Well, a little detail on the course. The feature is we spend 1/3 of the available time, whatever it is, to explore the problem space, in this case 30 weeks, 1/3 of the time to explore the solution space, and the last third to implement real functional prototypes. And I'll share some examples. And we would do the same thing in a 1-hour workshop. Reinvent the convertible experience. I'll assume the majority of you have been in a convertible, and you know that 120 kilometers per hour, it's a noisy, windy, no longer good experience. The first thing we ask these people to do, 2 weeks, create a functional prototype, a critical function. The most important thing the solution has to do, make sure you can do it. The team in Munich thought it was make a computer model. So they now have a computational model that says, yes, indeed, the wind circulates back into the cockpit from behind at almost the same velocity as if you stuck your head out. That's good. Now, computer and the car agree with each other. And the guys in Palo Alto said, well, the aerodynamics is fairly simple, but the acoustodynamics are unknown. We don't know where the noise comes from. Nobody does. Stethoscope, bent copper tube, where's the noise? They spend a lot of time out driving on the local freeway at high speed. And I'd have to explain their speeding tickets. Well, after a while, they have to do the standard thing, put tufts on the car, go out and drive fast, come home, park, they all hang down. Next step, dribble paint all over your new BMW, go out on the freeway, smear the paint all over your car, come home. The paint still shows you what happened. Good? But it doesn't show three-dimensionality. So now another prototype was, how do we use those tufts in 3D? And by the way, we think 2 leaf blowers will make a difference. It didn't. But now we can get some three-dimensional information. And we start to feel bold. We think we have a solution. We're going to bend a piece of aluminum. We're going to weld brackets on it, attach it to the windshield. Looks like it makes sense, right? The wind's going to come up over the windshield, turn around, and hit you on the lap instead of on the head. Better, right? Disaster. The whole convertible experience just got worse. Now what? Remember, when you're hunting for real big game, you can't quit and go home because you're tired, it's late, and you ran out of money. You have to keep hunting. Big word, defines who can participate in innovation. You have to persevere. We have an assignment that we give teams when they hit that wall, when nothing works. The assignment is try the craziest idea you can imagine. You know it won't work. We all know it won't work. But if it were, it would completely solve the problem. Maybe. Their big idea was forget the damn car, get a model car, put it in a wooden trough, run water by it, get a syringe, inject dye into the water stream, and build a scale model solution every 15 minutes. Some 100 prototypes later, no solution. Keep prototyping. The big idea, the next dark horse was, take your power drill, cut a hole in the windshield. He has no reason to think that will do anything except destroy that location on the car that's causing the most trouble. That's the hole. You have to imagine me coming into the loft. There's this BMW windshield laying on the road. It's a good 3,000-year-old. And the guy's got a little hand tool for cutting. And he's like, Professor Leifer, can we cut a hole in the window? No. Let me know how it works. Okay? You have to let them do crazy things. They cut the hole much too big. Over the experiments they did, it's down to about an 8-centimeter drainage pipe. And they totally eliminated the problem. Totally. Elegantly. Unfortunately, like most good designers, they created a new problem. How did that happen? Yeah, okay. Now you know that a hole in the windshield eliminates the problem. Now you have to design something that makes that hole tenable in a real car. That's the new design challenge. And they did. They only had 1 month left. This whole thing came to a crisis in the 8th of 9 months. They built a device, full up, functional, installed it in the car, has a trap door that can close in 10 milliseconds and protect you from rain and leaves and birds that might try to come through. The computational model guys said, oh yeah, it works. That green arrow goes right on through. Cool, no recirculation. We measured the velocities of the wind. That's cool, engineers do that. Look at the lady. Which lady's having the good experience? So this whole adventure, this entire expensive, complex, hard work, never succeed adventure was all to get a better user experience. It was part of our story of keeping the user experience in the foreground for all of your endeavors. That's the car, shipped to Munich. Dr. Freeman likes it a lot. He patents it in 103 countries. That was 207. Have any of you seen a BMW with a hole in the window? Who thinks you will see one? I get one vote in the back. Because they violated the aesthetics of automobiles. It's really interesting, the next problem that they created. We'll see where it goes. From Swisscom, make home TV interactive. A quick video clip to show you what the team did working with St. Gallen in Switzerland.
I try you down.
So this too is a prototype. Prototyping the experience you'll have if you have the device they're going to propose to you. The device is a robot TV. The robot TV, the black box, can turn its head, nod, and otherwise let you know that he's watching a movie with you. Just like BMW, we don't know that Swisscom will ever be able to do that. But we got a fantastic research project, 3 different research programs, exploring that with excellent results that making distributed communication tangible improves the experience, how you feel about it, and improves communication. One more, I think, just to give you a feeling for the diversity of things we can take on. Reinvent the architecture of a communication satellite? What's that? A communication satellite, these are people, this little white thing. It's about 6 meters high, 3 meters across. Make that 9 meters high, 3 meters. A huge monolithic electromechanical structure. Custom built every time. Takes 6 months to build and 18 months to test. So the major cost is testing. And the team comes up with an idea that has the metaphor of a lotus, the leaves unfolding. So instead of being all monolithic, it can unfold and put the work surface next to human scale effort. So the user in this story is the test engineer. They have a nice little video clip. I think it explains it.
Sometimes in satellite manufacturing, boxes need to be replaced. Unfortunately, this often happens late in the process. Imagine you wanted to replace a box.
So that's a computer-aided design model. They're not going to build that whole satellite. That's beyond our
without
scale.
taking apart the whole satellite. Open space solves this problem.
But they did build this system, a way to support those panels, which are very flimsy, by the way.
To the panel and attaches securely.
So that you could unfold them to the work surface. And at this hinge joint, something very special is happening. Cables that thick have to go across that, and heat pipes have to take thermal energy across that. Those were 2 never been done before. So they built physical, real-scale prototypes that demonstrated that could be solved technically to get at this new architecture. Okay, now we're at what do we do in research to better understand how people do design and how we can help them. So in our world, we use a flight simulation metaphor, and we instrument the people as well as the technical work. That's very unusual. Our preferred technique is video interaction analysis. We typically use 4 channels of video and audio, and we look very closely, frame by frame, at what the design team is doing. So unlike some other research that looks at the user, we look at the designers, because we think that's the shortest path to better products. John Tong was the first man to earn a PhD in mechanical engineering for studying human gesture. And the big deal was finding that a very large proportion of the actual design information was being transferred with gestures around here, move that screen, in a context of human-computer interaction design at Xerox PARC. And the next man to take on this challenge, Vinod Baya, looked at how are they using information. It's like a knowledge management challenge. So how do they retrieve information, how do they work with it, and how do they put it back into the system? And no matter what they did with the information, he found that on average, they paid attention to any one thing 7 seconds. We now see that as a fundamental time constant of human cognition. And all of you in the audience are giving me approximately 7 seconds of attention before you switch. And you go somewhere else, a memory, an association, a random thought, and you come back. We don't have a measure for how often you come back. Sometimes never. It's a big deal. The next man looked at the reports that are written, very demanding report scenario in this curriculum. What you did, why you did it, what you learned from it. We write that report after 5 weeks, after 15, and after 25. Some teams start low and don't add much learning, and they produce those thank yous. And some teams start higher, learn more over the works period, and they produce the wow. That's you must learn, you must accelerate your learning if you want to innovate. We have somehow always known that in design, it's the questions that are most important, not the decisions. No decision can be better than the questions you pose. And Uzgur finally nailed that in an experiment showing that those teams that produced about 40 questions an hour, wow, 20 questions an hour, thank you. We're beginning to close in on this distinction between big wow outcomes and good work, thank you. The two kinds of questions he focused on were divergent questions, how many ways can we do this? And convergent questions, given what we know in our resources, what shall we do? Divergent, convergent, two very fundamental cognitive tendencies that we have. The next man took that on and said, well, what if we manipulate the membership of the teams on those variables? What will happen? So he took 6 of the most divergently oriented people in my class and put them on a team. You never want to do that. He took 6 of the most convergently oriented people in the class, put them on another team. You especially don't want to do that. And then he gave them a challenge. Working in a group together with sheets of paper that contain facts and questions, which shoe is the best shoe? If we read all of those sheets of paper, you will predict with 95% confidence that big shoe is the one to go with. So this is not a design challenge, but a design communication challenge. These are the divergers. They spend 20 minutes. Green are the facts being shared. Blue are the questions being shared. When they're shared in time, you can see the behavior. Let's look at the convergers. Looks different, doesn't it? They're not big on questions. Let's watch them once in parallel. Just let yourself feel that. You've all been in meetings that happen these two ways. Big finding, the convergers are avoiding the question space that it's crucial to design innovation. He was inspired by those results to do a new experiment, whereas we have a new fragrance, what's the right bottle? Really? Little advice, thank you. I let you watch the divergers. Commonly shared information, uniquely shared it. Only one person in the team has it. Reject, choose. Watch the convergers. One fact shared. and a decision. And the rest of the transcript is their rationalization of choosing the raw bottle. And this is well cut. Let you feel that again. Assure you don't want those people all on one team of either type. Assure you that your hunting team needs one of each, plus some other types, and we won't get into that today. This is a piece I just want you to know it happened. We did a study of doing tangible prototypes like you did, of business processes, and we got wonderful outcomes. So I won't share that with you because you just did it. Tangible media. Business process planning. Make it physical. Lay it out on the table. Get it done. Wonderful outcomes. And now, finally, design thinking has an equation. And I thank you for your attention.